international public spokesperson for a global grassroots effort called 9/11 Pilot Whistleblowers, whose purpose is to show that there were no hijackers at the controls of the 9/11 aircraft, but that the aircraft were electronically hijacked through employment of a system called the uninterruptible autopilot that enabled the remote source to take complete control of the aircraft autopilot and flight management computers and fly the aircraft to its target. Now, once this system is engaged, the pilots can no longer disconnect it. We have a website at 911pilots.org and a YouTube channel at 911 Pilots for additional information. Now, for myself, I commenced flying over 50 years ago in 1968 and accrued my over 20,000 flight hours in 15 different aircraft over a career span of 35 years. Now, I can unequivocally state without reservation or embarrassment that I could not have flown the 9/11 flight profiles, and neither could the hijackers. Now, I have with me today Captain Charlie Walker. He lives in Texas, and he grew up in an aviation family, has flown airplanes since he was a young child, and I'm going to let Charlie tell us a little bit more about his career as both as a commercial pilot and a civilian pilot. Welcome, Charlie, and thank you for joining me for this interview today.
Well, thank you for having me, Dan. I really appreciate and admire all the work you do.
Oh, thank you. We can start off by you telling me when you commenced flying, the first aircraft you start flying, maybe a little bit of background about your aviation family, and then go into detail about all the airplanes you flew and the number of flight hours you've flown.
Okay, I was born in 1955, and my family had 5 airplanes at the time. Agriculture used J3 Cubs, and we flew all over as low-level flying. And I was taught to fly starting at that time. And but I waited until I graduated from college and I had enough money, and I got an engineering job, and I started spending all my money. I spent $1 million getting my ratings on all the different airplanes at the time. Started out in a Cessna 150, went to the 182 and 172s also, and then a bunch of Piper aircraft, the Lance, Twin Comanche, Apache, Navajo, and then at 2,000 hours, I started doing commercial flying for the airlines. I started with Metro Airlines south of Houston on the DH-6, the Twin Otter, and then I went to the EMB 110, the Bondurante, and that was for Emerald Airlines. And then went to the DC-9, flew the 10 series, the 30 series, and the 80 series. And then I got a 737 type rating from Southwest. I was the first one to fly the 300 series. It was when they had Shamu back in '88. I got my type rating 8888. And
go ahead.
Yes, I've just continued to fly. I got a job with flight safety, and I went through all their training, and I taught all the Continental Express pilots on the ATR. I was rated captain on the ATR 42 and 72, and then they asked me to come fly for them, so I did, and they put me in on the EMB 135 and 145, the regional jets. They weigh half of the 737, but they fly. They're much more agile. It's a lot of fun to fly.
And how many total flight hours do you estimate that you had over this period of time, Charlie?
10,000 hours roughly.
Okay, that's just a tad bit more than the hijackers, I'd say. Now, you certainly would qualify as an expert witness as a pilot if you were asked to testify under oath on camera before a federal grand jury or in a court of law. Would you be willing to do that at a later date if offered the opportunity?
I'd be honored to. Thank you for asking me, Dan.
Okay, great. Let's jump into the Pentagon profile and Hani Hanjour, the 29-year-old Saudi Arabian hijacker who allegedly hijacked American Airlines Flight 77 and flew it into the Pentagon. Now, he came to the States in the mid-90s, took some flight training before returning to Saudi Arabia. And then in 2001, January 2001, he returned to the States with the intent of re-enrolling in the same flight school. And the flight school turned him down because they said he was such a poor student when he attended there the first time. We have some other information on him on our website at 911pilot.org if you go to hijackers and scroll to the bottom of the page. But he was a very poor student, and yet we were led to believe that he flew this profile. Now, the profile itself, the airplane approached the Pentagon from the west, and at 7,000 feet commenced a descending, accelerating corkscrew turn of 330 degrees before arriving at the Pentagon at precisely ground level without skidding the surface at over 500 knots to hit the Office of Naval Intelligence. Now, this maneuver, this profile, was replicated in a simulator, and highly qualified pilots attempted to replicate this maneuver, and on almost every attempt, they crashed the simulator. The one exception that I'm aware of is a very highly experienced Boeing 767 captain who managed to hit the building on his 20th try. Now, given that, Charlie, do you believe that the hijackers could have flown the 9/11 profiles, and if not, why not?
No, it's absolutely impossible. It's beyond description. For one thing, you can't see out of the back of the plane, so you only got your front vision, and to be able to maneuver visually is just, you'd have to be there to even feel how difficult it'd be. It's just a tremendous transition, even to go from a 172 just to a 182 would be something, but then to go to a complex jet would be impossible.
Yes, they never flew jet aircraft in their life. Now, let me ask you, do you believe you could have flown the flight profile?
No, I mean, you're taught to fly, navigate, and communicate. And plus, it's a two-place airplane. Really, it's a three-place, but the autopilot, they got rid of the flight engineer, I guess. But, I mean, the first thing is you fly the airplane, you got to have the right heading, altitude, and airspeed. I mean, altitude in this case would be a controlled descent. But
Right.
and then the next thing is to navigate, which and plus at the highest possible speed. I mean, I've never flown that plane at that speed, but I can just imagine the difficulty. I wouldn't bet $1 million to one, that it could be done. It's not even reasonably, it makes me laugh to think about that story.
Yes, me too. It would be akin to just learning to drive a Volkswagen Beetle a year prior and then hopping into a semi-tractor trailer you never drove before and get it up to 500 miles per hour and try to drive through a Jiffy Loop without scraping the sides of the truck. That's how accurate he would have had to have been. Do you
Yeah,
agree
that's
with
a
me
good
there?
point. When you're close to the ground like that, it just takes a few degrees and you strike the wing. I mean, it's just
Right,
impossible.
right, right. Now, you've never flown a large modern commercial jet aircraft, but you've flown a wide variety of smaller aircraft. Could you, in your words, describe the differences between the cockpit of say, a 172 and that of a modern commercial jet aircraft?
Yeah, it's all computers. It's just when you do to fly without the autopilot is extremely difficult and time consuming. And sometimes they'll MEL the minimum equipment list, the autopilot. It just, you don't want to take that flight. But
Right.
it's a
Uh,
workout.
okay, I gave an introduction to the uninterruptible autopilot. Are you familiar with that system, Charlie?
Yes, in fact, I know the mechanic that installed that box on one of the planes. I mean, I don't know his name, but I'm sure we can go look up the records. He is sure he's a United aircraft mechanic. I'm also a certified aircraft mechanic. And I talked to him and he said,